All right, folks. Good afternoon. I'm not paying attention. Clock on the wall says 1:31. We'll go ahead and call the regular meeting of the Lawton City Planning Commission to order. Madison, will you take the roll, please?
Denham.
Here.
John Jones. Here. Jarvis. Here. Jester. Here. Deborah Jones. Here. Smith. Metters. Logan. Here. Springborn.
Maddie, have we heard from the absent members? Are they?
Metters did send an email to me telling me he wasn't going to be here today. Smith said he was going to be here, and so did Springborn. I'm assuming they're just running a little late.
Yeah, understood. Okay, please show Mr. Metters is excused then. Hopefully the other two gentlemen will join us. I need to verify the posting of the meeting was done in accordance to the Open Meeting Act.
The meeting was posted.
Thank you. And we do have a quorum. 6 members.
We do have a quorum.
All right, item number 4, consider approving the minutes from the June 15th, 2023 meeting that were included in your packet. I'll entertain a motion. Thank you, Ron. Second by DJ. Any discussion? Are we voting or are we roll calling? Maddie, please call the roll.
Logan. Yes. Deborah Jones. Yes. Denham.
Yes.
Jarvis. Yes. Jester. Yes. John Jones.
Yes. It's unanimous, 6-0. When you talk, yes. Yeah, that's a new deal, and hopefully I'll be able to remember the mic. Whatever. Okay, unfinished business. Continue our discussion to set parking requirements for stadiums, sports fields, and arenas, and consider directing staff to direct a code amendment to add stadiums, sports fields, and arenas. Mr. Good.
Good afternoon. Cameron Good, Planning Department. This is to continue the discussion we had. You had previously asked to bring back some more information on parking requirements for stadiums, sports fields, and arenas. The additional information you had asked for was Chickasha parking requirements. After contacting them several times, they finally got back with us. They were doing further research and trying to look back at when the sports fields were built and what the calculations were. They have no records of what they required, but we did take it upon ourselves to count how many spaces they have and how many fields they have. They have 454 total parking spaces, which comes out to about 21 spaces per field. And they do have a mixture of baseball/softball fields and soccer fields.
Did you happen to count the seats?
No, we did not count bleachers, no, sir.
Okay. Since that looks like what we're basing ours on. So. Any additional questions for Cameron? Don't get to try the microphone buttons. Come on. So what did we come up with? Ours is at the last page of the agenda item. The table?
No, that is just our current parking for public and civic and commercial spaces. That's just what our current code has available. Like I said in the previous meeting, Wichita Falls does do it as 1 per 4 seats provided. Norman does it 1 per 4 patrons based on occupancy. Oklahoma City, they list theirs as director approval. We reached out to them several times trying to figure out what that actually calculates to, and they never got back with us. It's just whatever the director approves.
And has LPS gotten back to us as far as their current parking with their situations?
No, but based on just further discussion, the classrooms alone don't seem like there's going to be enough parking based on what our requirements are.
One of my concerns is if you base it on seating, I just kind of drove by some of these facilities. They have very little bleacher seating, and I think what they do is just park, and they bring their yard chairs and, sit out. And I think at least when dealing with the high schools and junior highs, nobody really objects to it because normally they're after school. But when you put that in a public setting, you're going to have cars everywhere. And I don't know. I can't seem to wrap my head around how to address this. I don't know.
Well, one of my concerns from the last meeting was that we were going to include all facilities as a cumulative number. I just think of high schools, for example, where you've got football, which of course is practice, so there's not going to be really any fans there. But then you've got a baseball game and softball games, and their schedules are different parts of the year, basketball as well. So it just seems like I just have some issues with the multiple facilities being included. So they have all these extra seats. So that just seems a little excessive. And then again, we're not sure what this is going to entail for the proposed youth sports center either, since we don't even have a location yet, let alone plans.
Would it be appropriate not to take action until LPS gets back with us? I mean, maybe Cameron and some of the facility managers of LPS, I know they have a sports. All the high schools have quite a management, if you will, structure, and sit down and talk about this and get a little more information.
Was the city the one that approached us for the code requirements, or is this just something as the city was discussing their plans, we said, hey, we don't even have something, we ought to address it before it is an issue?
There was an architecture firm that planning on developing these new facilities for the 3 high schools that reached out to us trying to calculate the parking for the facilities. We gave them the parking numbers that we have for the schools, and we do have a calculation for the new facility itself, but when you're talking about the total parking numbers required, we don't have the numbers to calculate the fields and what their requirements are. And so we can't give them the total number required without specifying how we're going to calculate these sports fields. So it was the architecture firm that's working on these proposed buildings who reached out to us asking for the information. And so when it's not specified in the code of how we require it, that's when we bring the discussion item to CBC.
Nope.
Okay. I was just going to add to this that Don Davis, when he was president of Cameron, had a possible solution. He got called by the head of the Board of Education, not the one that's there now. And the head of the Board of Education had noted that the high school was playing football out there in the stadium. And he approached Don Davis and said, would you sell me the stadium for $1? And Don Davis said, well, of course, just have it out of here by noon. That solved the problem. Would that we could solve these problems as easily.
It appears to me that the school system is a whole different situation than stadiums or public affairs. And I don't see how you can mix this in with anything like that. I mean, school deals a lot of times are just kids involved. People drop kids off. So parking is certainly different than it would be on a stadium or some private sports arena. I think whatever we do, I think we have to be real conscious to build something that has some flexibility in it. To sit down and just put numbers of, parking space per 4 seats or whatever, to me, I think that's prohibitive of something coming in, because we've got to look at the use of it to see what the parking's going to be needed and so forth. So to put a number based on seats or based on football fields or whatever, I see is really impossible.
So are you saying you feel that the parking for a public or civic use, so such as a school, would be a separate category than a commercial
That's my
sports
thought.
field?
Yes,
And then also, just a note, I don't know if my opinion is allowed to be stated or not, but the schools itself already have a parking calculation for these high schools, 1 per 8 classroom, or 8 per 1 classroom. These are the same students that are going to be using these sports fields. And not all the kids are going to be coming out to the sports when they're actually in play. So the ones that are coming in visiting could maybe be offset already by the parking that is already provided for those schools.
So, sorry, DJ. So what you could do is you could set a precedence and say, if they're part of the school, then they're just included in the existing school parking that's there for the existing buildings.
DJ, wait till you get, okay, go ahead, DJ.
I need to know more about this. How many fields? Are they in different neighborhoods? What impact is on the neighborhood? Now, I gave you my example of, unfortunately, when the city got in between the postmaster and the schools and the mail couldn't be delivered. I'm with John. This is a very complex situation, and the schools are, I'm sure, much different than the public facilities. But it seems to me that we just don't have a whole lot of information here, and I would rather delay maybe 2 weeks or whatever, and have the staff of the planning commission sit down. Maybe the architect could come down, the staff of the school board that they think appropriate, and get us more information and get us, what we don't want to do is go through all this and then have the LPS say to the architect, oh, that won't work. Then we've wasted that time. So can we delay 2 weeks on this?
Well, and I think that one of the areas too is we're really not even talking about the elementary schools. This is strictly for the secondary schools. They're the ones that have the sports fields. There's no sporting events at elementary schools. They have plays, they have PTA, they have the other stuff that causes the problems you're referring to, or graduation, or whatever the case may be. But we're talking the secondary facilities. They have their own parking for everything, and in the middle schools, you have no students driving, so you should have plenty of spots for parents to come watch the deal. All the high schools, they pretty much have parking. I know Eisenhower Middle, they said they didn't have enough, I believe, at our last meeting already, and it's the newest school of the bunch. So the athletic director portion of the LPS would probably be the group we'd need to, because I think all the schools have their own athletic director, plus Mr. Dees is the LPS athletic director. You can work with them. They know what they're wanting to do. Let's see how we can work together to get that done. Then let's address the future sports field, the sports authority that's doing the east side, the west side, and then the other deal, and then get with them on what they envision their needs, because they're booming, are already growing their participation up higher. So that would probably, we're almost chasing a problem that doesn't exist yet. So,
would you like potentially some attendance records of previous sporting events at these high schools? Would that be information that it would tell us how many people are in attendance to that, and at least give us a baseline kind of what the attendance would be?
I'd be shocked if they could get that for you, frankly. But I would think that the schools, as John mentioned, with their parking allocated for their school requirements, that would be enough when after-school events are going on. So we can not even worry about regulating them unless these plans they're bringing together is going to cause additional during-school events that will add to that burden. But that's why I think you need to get with LPS administration, athletic directors, and see what they're looking to do, and then consider those numbers. And then we'll have that's Project A, and then the Lawton Sports Authority would be Project B with their plans too, and then find a way we can combine it, because one's a public school entity, the other's a Lawton Trust Authority. So, I mean, it's not like we're really dealing with commercial operations of anything yet.
Charlotte, do you feel that we would still need to make a code adjustment to clarify that the high schools, if that's the route we went, that the high schools do already provide enough parking, that the uses on site would just be accessory uses that are classified under that? Would that still need a code change?
John, can you turn yours off for a second?
David, why don't we leave the schools alone? I mean, the schools are an entity that certainly should govern their own needs. So why do we want to get into the school business?
Schools came to us.
Yeah.
No, the schools came to us. They're initiating this. They're architect.
Well, it appears to me that the schools should be sending a recommendation to us of what they need, because they're asking us to set a figure that we have no experience in. They have all the experience in. They have the architects that can tell you what the needs are. So why don't we listen to what they have to say instead of them trying to dump it on us and then not agree with us? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, they're a large entity. They know what they need. So why don't we listen? I mean, let's reverse this. Let them come back to us and tell us what they need.
Okay. Go ahead and click your mic off so
Yeah.
Charlotte can talk. Okay.
I do think that if we do decide to go that route, that I do believe a code change, and then that way it's in record that, this is what the CPC recommended, that the fields and stuff at the schools are accessory uses and don't count toward their parking lot. I believe that would be.
Not subject to.
Yeah, not subject to the regular parking requirements. So I feel like that would be a good thing to have. And then in 20 years, when none of us are here, it's in ordinance and it's there.
Do you promise?
Well, I have
Seems
about.
like I've been here for 30, so.
I have 16 left, so.
Before we recommend an accessory use or something like that, let's get all the stuff together.
Well,
and see, because as I said, contrary to what you've observed, I can tell you the people at Waterford, every time when Thomason was a middle school, they couldn't get their mail. If it was muddy, instead of parking on the ball field, they were parking in the neighborhood. I mean, granted, it was one day, or you just put up with it. It's kind of like a church and funerals. But let's get all our stuff together. And with that, I'd make a motion to table this. Karen, do you need 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
I would say until you can meet with the staff of the administration of the schools. Yeah.
All right. Then my motion is to table indefinitely.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Maddie, call the roll, please.
Jester? Logan? Springborn? John Jones? Jarvis? Denham?
Yes.
Deborah Jones?
It's unanimous, 7-0 to table indefinitely, with coordinating with those entities as we have discussed. Item number 6, consider making a recommendation to the City Council for waiving Section 18-6-16-678 of Lawton City Code stating an I-3 light industrial district across the street from a residential district requires opaque screening installed along the side facing the residential district and take action as necessary. Cameron, it looks like you get this one too.
Yes, sir. This is a request been brought to us by CDBL, the contractor, for a new office building for Kirk's EMS located at 1608 Southwest F Avenue. The building permit has been applied for and issued with the condition that an opaque screening be built across the north property line due to Section 18-6-16-678. Because this zone is I3 and across the street to the north is zoned R4 and used as a single-family dwellings. Their site plan does show opaque screening to be constructed straight out from their buildings to the east and the west, which would be blocking their side yards and rear yards from this across the street. But it would not be blocking the actual full property or the use because of the parking lot, and the building would still be seen. And so this is to request to construct it as proposed, with the opaque screening being on the side of the, blocking the side yard and rear yard and not the full property. Chris Boyd is here if you have any questions. He is with CDBL.
And this has always been in code where it's across the street. I thought it was if it was adjacent or behind.
So this section is specifically listed in the I3 zoning, which says across from an alleyway, across from the street, across from, let me see. It's across the street, it's across the roadway, alleyway, or easements. And so this is different than your typical opaque screening, which a street would nullify that screening requirement. But it would, this one is specifically listed in the I3, which catches this one because of the zoning of the property.
Any questions for Cameron?
I'd like to ask a question.
Okay.
This provision's been in the code a long time. I'm not sure why they're asking this to be waived. Can you give me an answer? That's the first question.
They're requesting for it to be waived because they don't want to put a fence up on the street, along the street, and blocking their entire building.
Have they been made aware of an alternative, and Cameron, correct me if the alternative is not there, that they can build an opaque screening fence on the residential side?
No, we weren't given that option, but that would be across the street on somebody else's property, in somebody else's front yard.
I understand, but it's not on, it is an option to you.
Okay, no, that was not made.
Okay. My next question is to the city attorney. What's the citation for waiving an ordinance, that we recommend waiving an ordinance? Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go. I don't have the citation. I just double checked with City Attorney Tim Wilson. He said that we can. I can get the citation for you, but I don't have it right now. But Tim confirms that they can waive that. The council, sorry, yes, the council can waive it. Right.
Whoa, time out. Nobody's but.
I don't want to recommend a waiver when the waiver's not in the code. I've never heard of a waiver, but that's okay. I mean, I've heard of varying the code, modifying the code, amending the code, but I've never heard of waiving. But
We've recently brought two through the CPC for opaque screening requirements. One was 1130 Southwest Lee, and one was with the Sheridan Square Strip Center. Both of those came through CPC for the recommendation, and both were waived by council.
Well, if that's the case, that's fine. I just want it to be legal that you can waive an ordinance, because no offense to Mr. Wilson, but I see some real issues here. Let's just waive all the ordinances. And I'd like that question posed to him sometime. You send me an email. Thank you very much. That's, so you know, you don't have any hardship, you just don't want to build a fence.
Correct, they don't want to put their building behind an opaque fence. They would like to run the fence from the building to the side property lines.
Okay.
And the fence itself is metal panel, which will match their metal panel building.
I understand. I think we need to think about this, folks, okay? Let's say I'm a hotel owner, and we do the setback for height, and I say, I don't want to build a fence. I don't want to put the landscaping in. And we're adjacent to an R1 area. This is a sticky wicket. Unless we can come up with some kind of reason other than I don't want to, I just don't think this is a good precedent at all. I'm sorry that we recommended this twice before, I really am.
David, I do just want to let you know the use of the property is an office building, not a typical I-3 zone use, which was where the requirement...
Where is this in location to the actual dispatch?
Right next door. There's vacant land just to the east of it, and they're going to be connecting that property with this property.
And which is the east version of the plans?
I'm going to pull up the visual aid for you on the...
Would it be the third one?
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen, the property in red, the red box is where they're proposing on building, and Kirk's is to the west of it. It is I-3 zoned already with the R4 to the north across F Avenue, and then this is their site plan where right now they are required to put it up here on the north property line, screening their entire use of the property, but they're proposing on putting it straight out from their building. So the parking lot on the north side of their building would be the only portion not screened, essentially. The current Kirk's EMS building does not have the OPEG screening. It just has a wrought iron fence. As you can see on the north side right here, it's just a gate that's made out of wrought iron. So their parking lot currently isn't being screened already.
Is the building in line with the gate, or is it farther south?
The current facility?
No, the proposed.
Farther south. It'll be farther south. So the current building is built at the building limit line. This one is roughly 25 feet further south of that.
So the fence would be where those little red asterisks are, is what the code would require.
Yes, sir. That's my notes on their site plan submitted through license and permits, was to provide an OPEG screening fence. So the driveways would not have an OPEG screening. It would just be the portions to the east and west of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say this code section came up a year and a half ago over by Salas's. Just west of Salas's, they were going to put up an open display. And it's I-3 zoning, so this was met as well. We told them they had to screen the portion that was across the street from the residential, or shift everything over where it was across the street from the public facilities portion, and because they were upset they didn't want to screen. And so we've kind of been looking at this code section to do an amendment to take out that when it's across the street requirement, because like this one, a lot of businesses are not going to want to put a screening fence across the front of their property when it's across the street. If it was right next to it, obviously, you know, I definitely wouldn't recommend waiving or modifying that code or anything like that, but across the street, that opaque screening fence is not going to do a lot to actually screen the property when you get that far away from it.
Well, why don't we recommend a code amendment instead of waiving the code?
How long would that take, and how long would that set Chris back?
So they've currently already been issued their permit. This is just going to be a condition on their permit, so they wouldn't be able to close out and get a final CO until this was either waived, change in code, or they constructed it according to code. So I don't know what your time frame is on construction, 5 months? So this would be about a 60-day process.
Okay.
Another way would be to send them to BOA and let BOA determine if they have a hardship.
But this is kind of a reoccurring issue, I would say,
Yes,
because the code doesn't...
The code's a permanent solution.
If the code said that if it was an I-3 use, rather
You do
than...
I-4 too?
This is only specifically listed in the I-3, it's not listed in the I-4 currently.
Well, those other prior examples, except for Solace,
Yeah.
those were residential, those were commercial.
Yeah, those were typical
So,
commercial uses, and so this would be...
Yeah, the across the street seemed new to me, so that's the thing that...
And we're also working on that code change that was recommended when we did those other two, to allow for a waiver or an appeal to come through instead of having to go all the way through council. They directed us to give it to either you or Board of Adjustments.
Exactly. Well, that's when you recommended BOA, I figured we'd be doing it anyway, so...
I think it's going to come back to you, actually. That's my opinion, but...
Okay, so, we can just deny the recommendation and instruct staff to pursue a code modification, and then they've got their building permit, nothing's getting held up, so they can proceed accordingly, and therefore, we get this thing back before the end of summer, and everything's good.
Yeah, so we would just have to draft it, send out public notices for a code change to Chapter 18, which is a minimum 15-day newspaper notice, and then we'd come back to the next available CPC meeting, and then that code change would be a recommendation onto council. Yep.
Another notification.
Another 15-day notification. But with it could be double noticed because it's a code change.
With the discussion here, and I believe we could do a double notice, because I know which way you guys want to go, or I feel like I know which way you guys want to go on that. So we could do a double notice and then bring it back to the first available CPC meeting, then it would go to the immediate next council meeting.
Okay. Do we need to do that in the form of a motion?
I move that we deny the motion before us and recommend that staff pursue a code amendment so that we can get the input of the council with regard to this issue and possibly changing it. And if possible, I would recommend that the staff consider double notice.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Maddie, call the roll.
Chester? Springborn? Denham?
Yes.
John Jones? Deborah Jones? Jarvis? Smith?
Very good.
Logan.
Oh, that's right, we got a night now. Okay.
In my email, it said 2 o'clock.
You didn't get the follow-up.
Oh, my bad. I'm walking here and I'm going, I know I read that right. That'll be an excused absence.
Yes,
Not unexcused.
no, you're not absent. You made it, so, but anyway. anyway, motion passed 8-0, so. All right, commissioners' reports or comments. FYI, all meetings unless special are at 1:30. The Thursday following the regular council meeting. Council meets 7 times a week these days, so they're regularly scheduled meetings, so. Any other commissioners' reports? Neil?
I took my watch to the jeweler to get it fixed because I thought I was a half hour slow.
Okay.
I did want to point out one other thing, and I don't know if it's been brought up here before. With this artificial intelligence that's going around, the problem we have, they have developed a means for exactly copying your voice. And people they talk to wouldn't know whether it was you or an AI device. So I would suggest you be very careful. If someone calls you and say you said something, you might want to find out more about it. But the AI thing is a serious problem, and it needs to be looked at closely.
Very good. Anyone else?
May I recommend that the city attorney's office sit down amongst them, because I know John's in the front office. If there's such a citation that allows the council to waive a law, and that's what an ordinance is, I think you guys need to go to lunch and think about that and maybe come up with whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, or even what the ramifications are. None of us need to be involved. You legal beagles need to get together.
We are legal chihuahuas at the moment. But I will find that authority. I will find that, and you're right. It is something that we need to be aware of for sure.
Can you give me a copy of that, Greg?
Will do.
Well, you can imagine, we go through a rezoning and go to the council, and we've had a public hearing, and people think we set certain conditions and, you know, that affect their property on this proposed use, and then all of a sudden we waive them. Yeah. That affects their real estate. That affects their investment.
Very good points. All right. Any other commissioners' reports? Yes, Neil?
And I feel like I need to point out to our good attorney that if you go into his office, just watch where you step.
Those chihuahuas. Okay. Secretary's report. Charlotte? Very good. Comments from the public? Quiet public. All right. I'll go ahead and call for a motion to adjourn. Neil, second. Mr. Logan. Call the roll, please.
Jarvis? Yes. Deborah Jones? Yes. Logan? Yes. Denham?
Yes.
Springborn? Yes. John Jones? Yes. Jester? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
It's unanimous, 8-0. Imagine that. Thank you all for being here. And, well, we didn't get it on the item, but John, it looks like you might have to take care of the next meeting because I'm going to be out of country. So